But the disheartening part was that although they got that settlement, Forever 21 moved elsewhere. You know, they said, okay, well, we'll let you win this one, but we're not going to do that again. We've learned our lesson, but on how to not get in trouble kind of thing. So that's an issue, is that people can lose jobs. And it's a similar issue I have with boycotting. It's like, I want to be involved and I want to help. But then when you boycott, you kind of just cut ties and leave, and people can potentially lose their jobs, you know, if money isn't fueling back into that system. So it kind of goes back to my original question of how can we appeal to our capitalistic society while maintaining ethical values? And maybe the answer is that we can't. You know, like, you cannot change individuals' values. Maybe if we happen to live next door to the CEO, and which was in like Beverly Hills, so most of us don't. You know, we can have conversations, but that's generally not a reality. So for me, like, maybe the answer is legislation. Why isn't it the government's responsibility to protect workers? You know, like, our nation, it's arguably by the people, maybe, but it should be for the people, right? And if most of us are workers in varying degrees, then why isn't our government protecting us? So for an example, back to farm workers, what the UFW is doing locally and elsewhere, they tried to pass the Fair Treatment for Farm Workers Act here in California. And prior, when Governor Schwarzenegger was in office, they had huge rallies, like thousands of people that walked to Sacramento to show their support, the workers themselves. And he had said, yes, this is needed, but then did nothing about it. Governor Jerry Brown, who's been known to support farm workers' rights, he actually vetoed this act. So once again, it goes back to money, because there's agribusiness and there's lobbyists that are going to give politicians money that, you know, we don't have. So does it need to go to the higher courts or small local kind of grassroots things? But something that Angie just mentioned, and I kind of jotted down thinking about, was she said that public outcry always works if we put pressure on corporations. But that is also disheartening to me, because why aren't the workers enough? Why does it have to be the consumers to get mad about it, you know? Because we have all these examples of workers, you know, organizing, boycotting, rallying, and it just doesn't work like it does when us as consumers, like outside of it, can make a stand and say that we're not okay with what's going on, or just to ask questions and want to learn more. But I just think that potentially it has to be a whole picture and to push towards legislation, because the workers, they can't do it alone. You know, like, we have to support them on the consumer end. So that's my perspective on corporate social responsibility.
Thank you very much, Shelby. I think it makes sense just to move to Maria Garcia. She might want to respond. She'll tell us a little bit about the CSUMB Corporation and how they think about these issues of corporate social responsibility. Maybe respond to on the issue of how pizzas run.
Hi. The question that I've been asked to focus on is, to what extent does corporate social responsibility apply to an academic corporation such as the University Corporation at Monterey Bay? But before I get to the answer to that, I just want to give you maybe a little bit of background, because I don't think a lot of people understand what auxiliary organizations are, or even what the role of the University Corporation is here on this campus. The corporation is a legally separate 501c3 nonprofit, and we exist solely to support the purposes of the university. We're legally separate, and we are one of two auxiliary organizations here on this campus. The other auxiliary organization is the foundation of CSUMB, and that auxiliary focuses primarily on philanthropic, so fundraising and endowments and stuff. And although the corporation is legally separate from the university, our affiliation with the university, as well as with the CSU system, adds an extra layer of rules and regulations and executive orders that we need to comply with. So we're not quite as free as a normal 501c3 nonprofit because of our ties to the university. the auxiliary organizations have been part of the CSU for a long time. And the main reason why they were formed a long time ago was to provide the universities in the CSU system with some flexibility that the universities don't have. One really good example of this is purchasing policies. So on the state side, purchasing policies are very strict and stringent. If we're buying something on the corporation side, we don't necessarily have to follow all of those stateside rules and regulations that have been set up. So we've got a little more flexibility there. One of the things, though, that all of the auxiliary organizations in the CSU system try to do is to mirror what's going on the state side. So even though we don't necessarily have to comply with all of those same purchasing policies, we use those as our guidelines to start out with. So does corporate social responsibility apply to the University Corporation at Monterey Bay? The answer is really simple. Of course it does. Who wouldn't want to be part of Am I too loud? No. Okay. So sure, corporate social responsibility applies to the corporation. What company would be against trying to positively impact society while being a successful business? But then the question comes up, to what extent does it apply? And I think here the case we have to probably narrow our definition of society, and for the corporation I think the definition of society would be the campus community as well as the surrounding community, because again the charge of the corporation is to support the purposes of the university. So if you look at it from the standpoint of the triple bottom line, people, profit, planet, I mean all of that really ties together, because even though you say it's a nonprofit, nonprofits still have to make money, and all the money that they make really goes back into the purpose of the organization that it's supporting. So if the corporation wasn't profitable, we wouldn't be able to turn around and use that money to do things like scholarships or support sponsored programs or do renovations to buildings that exist here on campus. So in order for us to even support the university, we have to be profitable to begin with. Supporting the planet and being environmentally conscious, I think that's just part of what the fabric of this university is. And the corporation doesn't see itself as any different from the rest of the university. So a lot of the decisions that we make, particularly when it comes to construction, because that's really one of the easiest things to do, we always look at making sure that our construction is sustainable. And then on the people side, again, this is one of those areas where we have to mirror what's happening on the university. So, it'd be nice if we could give all of our employees raises on a regular basis, but because we're mirroring what's happening on the state side, even though we've got the money to give our employees raises, if the employees on the state side aren't getting raises, we can't give our employees raises on the corporation side. So, and I don't know that a lot of people understand that about the corporation. A lot of people that I talk to think of the corporation as just like a bottomless pit of money, and really we're not. Because again, all of the money that we make, and if it doesn't go right back to the university in the form of scholarships or in the form of a contribution that the university can use for whatever programs they want, it goes into reserves so that we can do things like refurbish the res halls or refurbish the dining commons. And I do want to address the point that Shelby brought up about the Pete's and the ice machine. Some of that is the way that the Pete's was constructed, because it was done as an afterthought. I don't know if you guys know the history of that library, but when the library was designed, it was designed to cost more than what we were actually going to get the state to pay for. So, for example, the state was going to give us $63 million. These aren't real numbers, but if the state was going to give us $63 million, the design of the library was $80 million, right? So then we had to, what they call value engineer. So that means we had to go back and we had to go back and take things out. And one of the things that was taken out was that space where the Pete's is. That was always intended to be a coffee shop library area. But they took that out of the plans, assuming that the corporation would come along later and put something in there. And so we did, but we were told you can only have this oval shape in the middle of the in the middle of this big room, and so good luck with it. So we did the best that we could. We worked with a bunch of different coffee companies that came and gave us different proposals, and with the space that we were allowed to have, and the electricity and all of those other utilities that go there, we put what we could put in there. So the size of the ice machine, that's the size that would fit into that little coffee area. So, yeah. And going back to that whole issue of Pete's, or the library cafe, and it is run by Sodexo, we get the same response too. Even though I'm the client, the contract administrator, if I want something here on this campus, I still have to go to Sodexo and say, this is what I'd like. And I sometimes get that same answer, well, there's nothing we can do. It's got to go up to corporate. And then you wait for their responses, and it's, oh, corporate's still thinking about it. A really good example of how this happens and how we sometimes have to think outside of the box to make things happen on this campus is the farm stand that happens every Tuesday here on campus. One of the faculty members had a grant that would allow us to look into having a farm stand on campus. And so as part of that process, they approached Sodexo and said, we'd like to bring a farm stand on campus, and we're going to work with everyone's harvest and all of that. And their response was, oh, well, you need to apply to be one of our preferred vendors and have all of this insurance and this whole process. And it's a really long process, and a nonprofit like Everyone's Harvest, or a small business like Sparky's out in Pacific Grove, they can't afford the insurance that you have to pay in order to be one of Sodexo's approved vendors. So that was the answer that came back to the faculty members and the group that was working on this grant. And luckily, this is one of those things that escalated to me, and I was able to say, wait a second, this is something the students want, this is something that's going to be good for the campus, we need to think of a different way to bring them on campus. And so I talked to, not my district manager, but his boss, and I said, this is something we've got to bring on campus, we've got to find a better way to do it, and we were able to. So the workers get that response, the employees get that response, we've got to take it to corporate, and I don't know that this is a good thing, but I get it too, and I'm the client. So, but we just have to be creative about the ways that we solve those problems, because there's always a way to, there is a way to get what we want, and we just have to figure out the best way to do it. Yeah, so. That's actually really all I had. I kind of was expecting this to be more of a Q&A discussion type thing. So maybe when we get to the Q&A, if you guys want to know anything more specific about the corporation, I'm happy to answer.
We actually may not get to Q&A. We have 3 more presenters, which is my fault. I was supposed to be keeping time more strictly. But very pleased now to have Daniel Emerson, from a small, medium-sized enterprise, a CEO from Light in Motion down on Cannery Row.
Say goodbye to Sharky. Let's see. These PCs, I'm a Mac user, sorry.
No, okay, from beginning.
All right, delete my slides, Angie,
so
thank you.
Come on, all I can do this. Back here.
It's a passive aggressive. These are so hard to use.
It doesn't have a slide. It doesn't have a, oh my God, do it again. I want to go backward. So sorry. Oh, okay. Okay, going back. Going back. Okay, so from beginning, slideshow. From beginning.
All right, this is just going to run the background. So there's some pictures of our company. I thought Shelby raised some really interesting points. I think one of the things we miss is, what is a corporation structured to do? And it's structured to do one thing: make money for shareholders. Social responsibility does not exist in the corporation's makeup. It is not a concept. Corporation and social responsibility, corporation and environmental responsibility are not concepts that coexist unless we, consumers, force it. So they don't exist. So yes, you were frustrated. Surprise! That's the structure of the government that we have set up. And that is what we call capitalism. It's a problem. It's a huge problem, and it is accelerating a very severe environmental crisis in the world. As we saw from the slides on the unsustainable nature of fishing. It's not that the fisheries have collapsed. We're continuing to fish at an unsustainable rate. We cannot continue. So I want to abuse you all of any fairy tale notion propagated by business schools and the like that a corporation has a soul. It does not. It has no trace of any sense of responsibility to do anything except make a buck for its owners. Got it? Okay, that's this capitalist system that we all think is so wonderful and is going to change the world and the rest of the world should adopt. Okay, that's what we believe. That's what we're taught in school from the time we're little tots. It's this great, this is the way the world should be. Well, this is what it's gotten us. It's destroying our oceans, it's destroying our environment, and it's causing social chaos. So, that's not what this talk is about. This talk is about small to medium-sized businesses, which I think are part of an opportunity to make change. So again, these corporations, they will pollute as much as they are allowed to pollute. They will buy their labor for as little as possible. They'll make their products as desirable as they can and lie about it. I have competitors in the bike light space that have products on the wall at REI that deliver a fraction of what they claim they deliver. There's nothing stopping them. They can say and market to you complete and utter bullshit. And there is no legal repercussion to them for doing that. And you can go in there and buy it hook, line, and sinker. Hey, I bought a light that puts out 700 lumens. You know, I only paid $50 for it. Well, guess what? It doesn't put out nearly that much power. And you have no way of knowing unless you take personal responsibility to dig in and find out whether the company that is making those claims, like the seafood claims, have any legitimacy whatsoever. Well, wake up, consumers. We have this blind belief that corporations are good and that we can believe what they tell us. They all lie. And until you dig in to find the answers, you are being lied to every day. There are hundreds of well-documented big-scale examples, such as BP in the Gulf of Mexico, Enron, Countrywide Financial. How many people in this community lost their entire life savings to a local guy who was so trustworthy, Countrywide, and he was bilking everyone blind? Right? That's what corporations do. If they can get away with it, absolutely. They're making money for their shareholders. You know, he got caught. California American Water, our local water company. The water in this room, the water in that container back there was obtained illegally. They're breaking the law every day, supplying us water. They're drawing more water than legally they're allowed to do to supply us. I have the letter from their CEO for their annual report right here in my hand. Full-page letter. All it talks about is what? How much money he made for the shareholders. Does he talk about the importance of clean water in terms of societal responsibility? Do you think he gives a damn? Solid year-over-year increases were achieved in revenue, net income, and earnings per share. During the past 2 years, we've been proactively implementing initiatives to optimize our portfolio and ensure we're operating in areas where we can best serve customers, meet business objectives, and create value for our shareholders. It's their entire reason for being. That's what a corporation is. Get it. So, the larger the corporation, the more faceless it becomes, And the more removed it becomes from any social or environmental responsibility. I think part of that is because they have no roots anywhere. They don't exist. They exist in some corporate cloud, right? They have their headquarters in the Cayman Islands. No senior executive has ever been to the Cayman Islands. They've never had a board meeting there, right? They're not connected to how we live our lives every day. The only thing holding back the devouring appetite of the corporation to dominate all aspects of society, to privatize our public resources, the commons, our water. I mean, what community in its right mind would give the water that we need to live every day to a private corporation, it's not even headquartered here, whose senior executives don't go to our schools? Who would do that? We did. Monterey Bay. Anyway, I digress. The only thing holding them back from driving it to dominate all aspects of society, government regulation. You know how popular that is today. But it's really important. It's the fair playing field that our president talks about. That's critical. Government regulation in your decisions on how you spend your money. That's it. Those are the two levers we have. To control the beast, you need to vote, and you need to invest your money to influence responsible behavior. So, small businesses. There's an opportunity because we are part of a community. We have roots. My children go to the schools in this community. I drink the same water you drink, right? Small businesses, you have more influence just because they're here. Why is the coffee shop at the university part of a corporation? Why aren't you hiring a local coffee shop to be on your campus? You think you'd have more influence then? Absolutely you would. Well, they're going to tell you that they're contracts that are set in Sacramento with large corporations because they have influence, and they can influence the state school systems to get those contracts. But we need to support local business. And you can influence local business. It matters here. You're not going to change, the fact that Vietnam is having their mangrove swamps destroyed. That's a bummer. It's a real bummer, but it's very hard to influence at such a remote place. But you can influence it locally, supporting local businesses. My company, Light in Motion, if you're seeing our products up here, we're building a consumer brand. Our goal is to build a great and inspiring company whose products excite and enable folks like yourselves to go outdoors. To survive in a global economy, I need to work hard to attract loyal customers. The most important asset I can develop is a loyal customer, a customer who trusts that name, Light in Motion, whether I'm running the company or not. If I can get you to trust my brand, that what I tell you is true, and that I've done my very best to build a product that delivers, and I may screw up, but even when I screw up, I continue to work hard to earn that trust. That's how I will be successful. So the other thing about social responsibility is there is a business strategy that embraces it, because there are business leaders who are enlightened who believe that social responsibility and environmental responsibility will resonate with their customers. Not because a corporation or the structure of a corporation requires it. It doesn't. A corporation says make money. But I believe that the fact that you're in this room means you care about these issues. And the fact that you care makes you a target customer for me. Because I want my customers to care. And if I can develop that relationship with you, I will have a good business. A business that will allow me to influence and build something that of value for this community. Not just products, but something that has value within the community. Because why? Because I hire people, I train them, I create jobs that are fulfilling, meaningful, have people be part of something, building something that they're proud of. That's what I get off on. I make enough money, it's not about the money. I want to build something that's cool. I want to build a fun, cool company that people are proud to own our products. That's what I personally want to do. So to do that, I need to embrace the concepts of social responsibility and environmental responsibility. Why? Because they're my personal values. And because I believe my customers will relate to me and what we're doing and say, I want to support that company and be part of them by supporting their products. So that's where the leverage is. But it only works with Seafood Watch. It only works with Light in Motion if I can tap into that engaged person. Right? So I work daily to ingrain those personal values into my employees. Every person I hire sits down with me, and I go through our values and what it means on a daily basis at work to make decisions that are consistent with the values that I have articulated. All right, that's part of building the company that I want to build. We strive to reflect this value set in everything we do because it matters to me as a CEO. So again, you're getting the sense that the corporate structure is impersonal. What makes it personal, especially at a smaller business level, is the people who run it and what are their values. And values are very different. I mean, you look at Larry Ellison and Steve Jobs. My wife worked at Oracle Corporation, and I understand Larry Ellison's values very well, and he's extremely ruthless. And all the senior managers are ruthless, and it's a ruthless corporation. And they make a lot of money for their shareholders. But they're not my values. And you can choose to align yourself with companies who share your values. One of our values, and this is my last statement, is to be a local manufacturer. I'm swimming uphill. Business school people would all tell me, you're crazy, go to China, cheaper labor, blah, blah, blah. But I believe that building our products here allows us to build better products. We learn faster. And the other reason I do it is because I think it matters to the community in which I work. We are building a society where everything is being privatized. Our water's privatized. Our libraries are going away. Our public schools are being privatized. Right? Where are we coming together as a community to connect with each other? We're coming together at coffee shops owned by large, faceless corporations. That's not the answer. And a manufacturing facility is a place where people at all levels, from people making $10 an hour to the CEO, meet daily, talk about goals and objectives, try to achieve success, help each other grow. Right? It's a place where communities mix together. And there are fewer and fewer opportunities for communities to mix together. We are building technology is actually separating us, not bringing us together. So I also just have a personal belief that manufacturing is important. And as a country, until we build an industrial policy that makes manufacturing important, we will continue to push those jobs, those Apple jobs. Those Apple jobs could be here. They absolutely could be here. If we had different policies, governmental policies, and incentives, those jobs could be here, and they would be much easier to control the working conditions if they were. But that's not the global view of global trade. And the last little comment I'll leave you with is, after the great economic collapse that we've experienced, the countries who did really well during that time period were all the countries that were not part of the global World Trade Organization. Countries like Brazil, Singapore, they came through that unscathed. So again, something we're taught is, oh, this global trade, you know, we're a global economy. This is the solution to our problems. Well, believe it at your own risk. Thank you.
Mark, I'm sure you have a lot to say from the labor perspective. Students are going off for 2 o'clock classes, but those, please, if you can stay here. We have Mark Weller and Erika Rodriguez from Students for Quality Education, which is a really important student organization on campus. So we are running out of time, but if you can stay, please do.
You stay. Extra credit. You stay.
Okay, well, yeah, I am Mark Weller, and I work for the Hospitality Workers Union, represents 1,200 workers here in the Monterey Bay. A course unions organization that brings workers together to fight for better wages, better benefits, fairness on the job. And as I think we've been hearing, that's a very necessary thing in today's corporate environment. And I didn't expect it, but I think my time could be much shorter because Daniel took most of what I was going to say in the first part of his speech, and I didn't expect that. So that's kind of nice. Look, I think my fear about this whole concept of what do we call it? Corporate social responsibility, and I think I share it with Professor Tran too, is that while we're trying, I think,